So, hi, how are you, everyone? My name is Mary Neely, and I'm the founder of Evolved Education. I'm a learning specialist, and I've been working in education for about 25 years now in New York City, primarily in the public system here as well as in the private system. And Evolved Education provides services for families to help them as they educate their children from nursery through college. Here's just a little bit of information about us in case you're not familiar. So the way that we work is I like to describe us as the place where we understand your child and we know how to teach them. So we really do spend time getting to know your child and all of the things that are going on with them, and then we really try to partner your family and your child with an educator who can help them to reach their potential. We also work with parents, and we provide parent education consulting as well as school placement advisement. And these sessions really help families also to ensure that their students learn as well as possible. So today's presentation is part of a series that we're doing. We are talking about readiness in the elementary school years. We've done a presentation on kindergarten readiness, first grade readiness, as well as today's, which is second grade readiness. We'll have third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade upcoming. So if you have students in those grades as well, you can certainly check out those webinars as well. So as I sort of mentioned just a little earlier, I usually have someone on here who is teaching the grade, kind of go through all of this information. But today we're doing this just a little bit differently in that Tammy Fish, who is a very experienced second grade teacher, has helped us to create the content for today's webinar. And I will be putting on the hat of the second grade teacher for today and sharing with you some of the content that your children will learn this year and sort of some ways that you can help your children going into this year to prepare for this coming school year, which is going to be obviously very different than we've ever experienced before. So if you have questions, if there's something you want to know more about, you can put the information into the chat. You can certainly let me know anything that you need to there. If anything glitches, we're all kind of on the right now dealing with some power outages here and there. So if anything goes awry, just please let me know. All right. So the first thing I like to do is just give you a chance to perhaps think a little bit about your child and what are some goals that you might have for this coming year. And perhaps you want to grab some paper and just have it on hand so that you can really start just by thinking about the aspects of your child that you learned about perhaps during COVID as you had your child at home at the end of the first grade year. What was that like for your child? What did you learn about your child? What did you see them really thriving within and doing well with? And perhaps what did they have challenge with? And perhaps take a moment and just kind of write down a few ideas, and also perhaps your goals for this coming year, what you really want your child to be learning and doing in this coming year. So I'll give you a minute just to think and reflect or write something down. Okay, so just keep your child in mind. Just know also that just like every year of school, there's going to be variations in every child's development. And really, we want to celebrate wherever your child is at in their development. And just know that these are some content areas and developmental milestones that tend to happen in second grade. If your child isn't meeting them in any regard, I'm always happy to talk with you about that. But it's really important that we all respect our children's developmental processes and just know what's happening in the grade level that your child is attending so that you can find out more information if, let's say, milestones are not being met. So today we're going to talk about literacy, we're going to talk about math, social emotional development, we're going to talk about fine and gross motor development, especially within writing and physical development. We're also going to talk about the expressive and receptive language as it relates to literacy and writing in particular. So the things I want you to consider would be what your child should know at the beginning of the school year, what are some tools that might help you to support your child's readiness, and how you might effectively use some of these tools in your own home, especially if you're going to be supporting distance learning this year. So we're going to start with literacy. And again, most second graders are going to have variety in their development here, but here are some pieces that we feel are important for you to know. So we really do want students to know that all letters have sounds and to be very, very fluent with their understanding of that correspondence between the letters making particular sounds. We want them to identify and apply spelling and syllable rules, especially by hearing the sounds that they do know and being able to inventive spell. We should really see in this year words that we can read back, even though perhaps they're not spelled exactly correctly. We should be able to really understand what the student is reading or writing rather, and they also should understand what they're writing and be able to read it back, even if it's not exactly spelled correctly. We also want to see them writing sentences with correct punctuation and capital letters. So they're really starting to understand that a sentence has a beginning and an end of an idea, and there is a format to a sentence. So the teachers are going to start to really teach them about the use of capital letters and the use of punctuation, especially during the editing process. Many families may ask, well, what do I do if I see my child not having this kind of mechanical skill? And I would just say that there is a process to writing that students take on, and that involves brainstorming at the very beginning, and then organizing their thoughts on the paper in order, maybe pulling out some key thoughts they really do want to write about and maybe eliminating some others, and then writing their draft, and then they're going to be revising and editing. So it just depends on where your child is in the process. You don't necessarily need to bring up editing and revising techniques and mechanics when the student is brainstorming or writing their first draft and just getting out their ideas. But certainly what we eventually want them to be doing is to just fluently understand that a sentence has a capital letter at the start and a period at the end. So they wouldn't have to necessarily go back and revise when they're finished writing. But if you notice your child isn't doing this yet, you can wait, give them some time just to process and get out their ideas, and then point out one or two things that they could learn for the next time as they actually do write, and see if you're successful in encouraging that skill to develop. So certainly this is going to be something that will be formed in this coming year. In addition, it will be a really important skill for students to choose the right books. So it will be important for you as a parent to know your child's reading level. So books are leveled according to the complexity of the decoding, and you will want to look for books that are really on or maybe just below or just above your child's reading level, and really coming between levels I and L is a helpful thing. So if you have any questions about any of this, just please put them into the chat. I'll keep kind of glancing down and looking if you have anything that you would like to stop me on. So what I also think is very important that you know about, that parents know about, is that you can find books that are on your child's level. There is a site called Learning A to Z. It's like, I'll type it in the chat. It's learningatoz.com, and you can actually print out books that are on your child's level in it. Like they have narratives there, they have expository text, they have text on science, history, all kinds of things. And it is really helpful if your child could be reading at their independent level on their own as much as possible. So you as a parent definitely want to know what level your student is at. Similarly, if you notice that your child is avoiding reading or not really engaged in the reading process, you definitely want to find out a little bit more as to why that might be. Sometimes some students have underdeveloped skills that really come about, especially in the second grade, because more phonics is learned and the students are certainly reading higher levels of text. So it would be important just to dig in there a little bit if you're noticing that your child is showing you that they're not interested in some aspect of learning. All right, so it's also, as you're reading with your children, it's great if you could think deeply about characters and their actions. So we do this a lot when we work with students in reading comprehension throughout the years, even in elementary, later elementary and middle school. But it is really important that you start just by asking students to think about the characteristics of the character, name some adjectives that would describe the character. How is the character changing throughout the book? What is the character typically like? How is the character responding to other kids and characters in the book? What are they doing in the book? What are some of the actions that they take? So there is a lot to really be said about this piece of development because it really activates the brain in important ways. So students are not only gaining important reading comprehension skills by being able to retell aspects of a character, but they're also holding information in their mind and articulating it back out if it's a longer book. This is the start of some important executive functioning skills. So there's a lot going on in this grade that really is so important, and it really is at a next level in terms of the cognition and the cognitive development that happens. Certainly a difference between first grade and second grade in these regards. So it's also important to write about reading and about real life experiences. So students should really be writing a good amount about the books that they read. And you really want to allow them to write volumes of their ideas and what they're connecting to. My favorite writing program is called SRSD Writing. And when I took the course, I connected so much to it because in the beginning of the framework that you learn as a teacher, you teach kids to be extremely engaged and happy to write. And I think sometimes some of that is lost in our education work with children, to be honest. I think it's really something we have to really make sure that we're inviting kids to write because we want to hear their voice and we want to hear their ideas. And sometimes we can get overly, I guess, I say the word overly, I don't mean to be adding in some judgmental pieces there, but I do feel like we can stop those really eager communicative processes and play really with language by focusing so much on the mechanics of the work. So I think it's important as a parent that you really monitor how your child is feeling about writing, and if they're feeling excited and empowered to share their voice, that is really crucial to hang on to and celebrate. And I think it's so much easier then to teach the mechanics when you have that part of your child's development happening. So I want you to pay attention to that this coming year. You're also going to see in this year a good amount of focus on the writing process. So you're going to be writing, revising, and editing stories. So lots of, longer writing workshop pieces. And that's something that your student is also going to need to develop more stamina for that type of work. And really, seat work is something else that sort of does build in this particular year. So in terms of what you can use with your child, and I have a couple more slides on literacy, so we're not quite done, but it is great if you could have some 3D items for your child to work with, especially if they're coming into the distance learning, especially in literacy, having actual books and using flashcards for the sight words. You could certainly get some of those just plain index cards, and as the teacher gives them a sight word list, you could tape the cards up onto the wall and just let your child really play with them and touch them. It is so important at this age for your student to engage with the materials and really to make meaning out of them. So if they start playing with them or rearranging them or making a little design or something of that kind, these are ways that children actually engage with the materials, and that's okay. I love the magnetic letters. If you want, I will follow up when we do our follow-up for this webinar. There's a company called Wilson that does have a magnetic letter board, which I really like. And we also mentioned already the Learning A to Z, which is the books that you can find that are leveled for your child's reading level. So this is a long list, and I'm not going to go into every single detail here, but you will be able to obviously see this slide right now. You could take a screenshot and we'll have it on the YouTube channel afterwards. But this is really some of the details that Ms. Fish was able to give us that she really works on with her second graders in the writing process. So I think it's really helpful as a parent that you know what the expectations are. And again, please go back to what I said before, which is just that crucial is that your child wants to write and understands the power of writing and the joy of writing. And then we can implement any number of these mechanical and really important lessons in terms of skills. And the skills shouldn't come all at once either, right? So we want to be careful about not giving our children so many new things to learn. I think we can all relate as adults when we have a lot on our plate that's new and we have to learn so many things, it may just not be successful. So a child is really no different. So if you notice that all of these things as you get into the year are really challenging for your child, you might talk with your teacher and really strategize on 1 or 2 or 3 really important pieces that you feel your child could make progress on, and really double down on supporting your child to master those before you add additional components of skill to their plate. So I'm going to move on. Again, if you have questions, feel free to input them. So this is just a little bit redundant, but just some tools for you as parents to help you to develop literacy. We talked about some of this already. Oh, the journal idea is actually a really good one. I've used it over the years with all of my students, going all the way even through middle school and high school. And just keeping a journal, letting your child actually have a journal just to express themselves is really powerful. And even if you have a child who's a reluctant writer, if you just give it to them and allow them the space and the privacy of their own writing and respect that, it does tend to be something they explore or look at least. So story ideas are also great. I love actually working with the students around just telling stories. So you as a family, if you have dinner time, a lot of us have dinner right now with our children. So you could always let your children make up a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. And the beginning of the story would have a character as well as a setting that your child the story takes place, that your child makes up, and then some kind of conflict or challenge would be in the middle, and then a solution would be at the end. So just kind of think about ways that you can really help your children to articulate their ideas. Always celebrate when they are able to tell you about their ideas, because that's also an important precursor to writing, is coming up with those ideas in their brains for what they're experiencing and all the things that are happening. So this is also a nice long list of different ideas for you in terms of how to support your child's learning, literacy, development. I'm not going to go through absolutely every one of these, but I really do like the idea of questioning your child, letting your child really learn to speak in full sentences. That's really, again, the precursor to writing. So if your child is a child who tends to give you 1 or 2 word answers, you might model for them what a sentence sounds like and ask them to try out how you're talking. So it's sometimes a process, but I do think that that really helps. I also think repeating or telling a story that you've heard is really helpful to brain development. So we often, in my learning specialty work that we do, will have a student read a passage and then retell the passage. And if they need assistance, we'll actually give them the book and say, in this case, you can actually use the exact words in the text when you retell. It's absolutely okay. You can refer back to what you're seeing there. Some of the kids are worried, even at a very young age, they understand plagiarism. We're not asking them to write anything down or come up with ideas, but we will want them to be able to process what they've read. And some children just need some assistance with that. So always good to have your child retell the stories and retell their day, tell you about a situation that has happened from beginning, middle to the end. I also like the fact that Ms. Fish put on here that you should let your child see you reading every day and encourage your child to really read short stories or articles in the newspaper. Anything is reading, really. And in my house, we have 3 children, 3 different ages, and the way that I have found is helpful to structure reading is just to make it a consistent drop everything and read half an hour of time in our day, Monday through Friday. And since COVID happened, that became a lot easier to implement, but it does really help when everyone in the house is actually reading. So there's not something else happening that might distract someone's brain to another area of the home. So if that's helpful, go ahead and use it. It's a good hack. So then let's just go on to math. All right, so any questions on literacy? Anything that I can do to help you with that? I'm just gonna pause in case there's anything that you would like to know. All right, well then we're gonna go on to math. So math is also a very interesting experience for students who are entering the 2nd grade because their understanding of numbers becomes much greater as they start to deal with very large numbers. And everything in math really should have or be rooted in a 3D understanding of the concept at this age. So if you're going to be distance learning this year, you might think about getting some supplies that would really help your child to build very large numbers. One of my favorite things to do is to take those popsicle sticks and group them in groups of 10 and then make 10 groups of 10 into 100. And if you're learning 1,000, I would actually make 1,000. So I would make 10 of those groups of 100 just so that your child can really understand what 1,000 really even is. And it will really stick with them. It will help them to make meaning out of that. You're also going to see your child deepen their understanding of place value. So this just means that they're going to understand that there's a ones column and a tens column, a hundreds column, and a thousands column, and that each number has a particular place that then translates to meaning. So again, if you see your child struggling ever with math, it may be, and it usually is, because there's an underdeveloped skill, there's an underdeveloped understanding of what it is that they're working with. So I would go back and just make sure you give your child an experience with whatever it is that they're learning, and then bring it back to whatever is happening. You can always ask your teachers if you're not sure about any of this in terms of what materials you could use and how they might advise you to work with your child on any of this. But this is what they're going to be getting into. So we have bought, for example, in my house, we have Unifix Cubes, we have these hundreds charts printed out. You can find them online. And these are just really nice tools that students can use to make meaning. A pretty big mistake that I see parents making is to pull the tools away too soon and to really ask students to be using the paper and pencil algorithms, meaning like just stack the numbers and subtract them. This is how you do it. Just do it this way. And the reason I say that is because children at this point in our education system are being asked to understand what it is that they're doing with the numbers. And I really would urge parents just to also go in, and you may in your education never have been able to think about any of this. So it's a really nice time to kind of question, wait, what does 1,000 even mean, if you're not sure, which is totally fine. In addition, what I also want to say is that students will be learning about multi-step word problems. So at this point, organization and executive functioning starts to become very important. So if you notice that your child isn't really following these steps in a word problem, or has trouble really sequencing the steps that they need to take to get ready in the morning, or has trouble really understanding what comes first, second, and third in a task, these are things that I would definitely try to address this year, because everything gets more complicated from here on out in terms of that piece of their cognition. So if you can assist them with pictures, cues, reminders, just remember they need the tools. So you as parents don't be afraid to pull out a tool if you're noticing that your child is struggling. That's okay. And visuals are usually really helpful. So how can you practice? Well, you can certainly ask a lot of questions. You don't have to be the expert in the math. Just remember that. So all you really need to do is don't tell the punchline of the joke before the joke is told. That's kind of a good way of thinking about it. So you don't want to just show them how to do something. You want to allow the teacher to really give your child experience with the concept and allow your child to develop the understanding of why they're doing what they're doing in the math. So you can just ask questions such as, how do you know? How did you figure this out? Tell me more about it. And if you notice your child doesn't know, you be the eyes and ears for your child's teacher and just let them know what you're noticing. You can always take a quick picture and send it to your teacher. If you're very busy, that's a good hack to use. Playing board games and card games are wonderful ways of building mathematics skills. There's sequence involved, there's direction following, there's counting, and all of those things contribute to mathematical development. You also can compare amounts, and you can solve simple story problems that you have in your everyday life. For example, cooking is math, so you can do some cooking with your child, ask them to add up the cups of the materials that you're using. You could certainly allow them to think about what would happen if you made 10 of these recipes, even though that would be really hard, again, getting them to really think about what would happen if the number gets really, really big. What would that really be like? So here's a nice long list again of some things that Ms. Fish has given us to develop mathematical learning and development. So these are just different ways that you can help your children understand important mathematical concepts. It is important that children understand time, and I love having calendars for children so that they can understand what day it is and how many days till the end of the month, what time it is. So having a clock around and just pointing that out to them is very helpful. You can also start to just categorize the things in their lives as this weighs more than this, and you could just kind of use your environment to have some of these discussions. I also like the money one because they start to be very curious about money at this age. So you can use that as a catalyst to teach about the penny and nickel and dime and all of this. I just learned there's a change shortage happening right now. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that, but I was in the store before and they were saying that there is a change shortage. And I thought I should probably go through all of my change and get it out of my house. Okay. So now we're on to social emotional development. So these are just some things that are happening for your child as they enter and go through second grade. Again, every child's going to develop at their own pace and have their own experiences within this piece of development especially. But certainly if you notice that your child is not doing any of these things, and we'll talk about distance learning in a minute because I want to make sure you get that piece of information too. But essentially, you do want to partner with your teacher if you notice any of these things are not developing, so that you can help your child with some tools to develop this aspect of them. So I know everyone is probably thinking a lot about distance learning and how it will especially impact the social emotional development of your child. And I think that is very important to do, because I think there are real concerns actually for this piece. How could it not come about, right? And I don't have any easy answers, and I would like to just say that I think everyone is really entitled to however they feel about this coming year and whatever they're going to do with their children. I hope everyone will be as safe as possible with their decisions. But essentially, you know, I do think that it is important to really overdo the connecting time that you have with your child right now, because they really do need to have many opportunities to connect with another person and to really play. And sometimes playing out what is on their minds is a really nice way of getting at whatever you might be seeing or hearing them kind of talk about. And you know, it might help you to understand what their brain is actually processing and isn't processing. So, you know, taking a car and making the car talk to the other car, or taking a doll and having the doll talk to the other doll, and just playing out some things like, hey, did you know this year we're not going back to the classroom? We're going to be on the computer when we start school, or some days we're going to go into school and some days we're going to be on the computer. What do you think about that? And just, you know, see a little bit about what they might be feeling, some questions they might have. They might be missing their friends. They might not be missing their friends. They might sort of have everybody out of sight, out of mind, and that might be their experience too. So certainly it's important, I think, that we reach out to the teachers that our children have and really talk about some of the concerns that you might have within this piece of your child's development, and just get some ideas for how you might support your child through all of this that's listed here. Some of the things that I think you can do, which, you know, just listed here, would be to like sustain attention over a period of time. So helping your child really to have some seated work and seated reading time, some writing time, some exploration of mathematical materials and concepts. Those are all things that, you know, I think are can be organized in a home. And the real challenge will be, of course, with the peer-to-peer interactions and what those will really be like, and how the play will be happening in a supervised and curated manner, right, in school. So that's going to be more of the challenge. Again, happy to take questions. It's a loaded concept, I know, I understand. So gross motor is another piece that children are certainly developing, especially in the second grade. So there's going to, I think, you know, something that I really feel strongly about for all children, but especially in these days of being at home, is just that we all need to move in order for our brains to work well. So giving your child some time to really work on any number of these physical skills. We sort of make games and funny competitions in our house just to keep everybody moving around, and also just taking a walk around the block and having some time outside is really important and helpful. So hopefully this sheet helps you a little bit in terms of knowing what's important. So we're sort of at the end, and you know, we have time, so I'm happy to take anyone off of mic and answer any questions. I'm going to stop the recording at this point, so if anybody does have any questions, they will not be included. And I would really like to thank everyone for coming on today, and I hope that you found the information helpful, and at least some you know, some good nuggets of information were provided, and some hacks for you for your parenting journey this coming year as your child enters second grade. So I'm going to stay here. If you'd like to chat, I'm happy to do that. And I'm just going to take this off of our recording. Just give me a moment. do that.